however it works. But for a Buddhist, because we think about causality, then we think, my gosh, those people are suffering. But how that person is going to suffer as a result of what he's doing. And I think this would apply to a Christian as well. If you believe in an afterlife, then you'd think not only would you feel for the victims, but you think, my gosh, where is that aggressor taking himself with his actions? There's another side to this too. It's all to do with impermanence, and when we cling to things. And we cling to things, then, at first, something gives us a nice experience. We fall in love, or we like a bit of a drink, or something like that. Something gives a nice feeling. But once we start clinging to it, then things go wrong. So relationships break down, people drink too much, all sorts of things happen. And for a wise person who's seeing the beginning bit, the fun, the niceness, but who knows how the human mind works, how we get involved with things, how we have such hopes and fears, then already there's compassion, even though there's a smile on the face. I don't have too much time, but I'd like to give you a silly example, but I think it really puts the finger on it. It comes from my childhood, in a time after the war when chocolates were rare. And my elder brother, coming home from his military service in Germany, brought back a beautiful box of chocolates. And I ate one, when nobody was looking, and two, and three. Sick as a rat, as they say. Sick as a rat. Now, a wise person, if there was a CCTV camera in there, watching the child with that grin, Christmas, everything like that. But because it's inevitable that 10 minutes later it's going to end up in the loo with like this, you see. Now, it's a silly example, but there are so many things in life where, in trying to make ourselves happy, we in fact get ourselves into a lot of long-term trouble. And a wise mind seeing that feels compassion. Anyway, the second sort of suffering is, second sort of compassion is a response. It's called the compassion that comes through wisdom, or the compassion that comes through Dharma. We have more idea of what's going on. The third sort of compassion is very, very deep. Most people can't get it. It comes when we have profound and sacred experience. And we realize that actually every single human being has the possibility of that experience. When we touch the deep joy of meditation, the profound peace we can attain, when our mind opens up to the amazing blessing that's possible, and one realizes that a human life is the most wonderful potential, and then looks around and sees people hurting, crying, in pain and confusion because they've not awakened this treasure, then that is the deepest compassion, and it just happens. However deep your own experience is, then that deep is the compassion you have for everyone who could have it, but who's not yet uncovered it. Now, one of the other things I'd like to say about compassion is that compassion shouldn't just be a feeling. In our Western world, we are very spoiled, and just to sit comfortably at home and feel compassion for the world isn't compassion. If you don't act on your compassion, it's just a luxurious thought. It's a sweet feeling. It's not genuine if you don't act. So compassion in action is very important. In this town, anywhere you go, there are people who are lonely, who are hungry, who need friendship, who need support. And so just to sit in one's own comfort and let them be in their discomfort is not very human, actually. So compassion is something that we need to really think about in depth. It's not a feeling, it's a reality of one's life where one is in fact more aware of what's happening in our brothers and sisters who are the other human beings with whom we share this life. And we can't just leave them to suffer. And the way we develop that in Buddhism is to try and feel for each and every being as though they're as dear to us as the very, very dearest person in our own lives. Now, in the Tibetan system, that was always mum. So always just think of every sentient being as your mother. In the West, not everyone has easy experiences with their parents, so we have to say we try and feel as dearly for each person as we do for the dearest person in our life. And then you just can't leave it to happen. You can't know that there's someone around the corner who needs help and just think, yeah, feel sorry for them. Sit in your house and feel compassion isn't compassion. So compassion in action is very important. Now, this moves us on to what's happening this evening. We're receiving an empowerment, and an empowerment is what needs to happen so that we can do some of the more effective, profound practices within Buddhism, within Tibetan Buddhism. And in those practices, we actually become the living embodiment of compassion. We do this through using our imagination. We visualize ourselves as perfect compassion. To someone who's coming quite new to Tibetan Buddhism, it's full of all sorts of weird images, all sorts of things that you didn't grow up with and that look, well, sometimes pretty over the top, don't they? If you've seen some of them. Tonight we're receiving, for instance, the empowerment. It's actually two empowerments in one. It's what empowers you or entitles you to do the practice of Avalokiteshvara, Chenrezig, which is the main compassion practice, in two ways. One is a form that has 4 arms, and one is a form that has 1,000 arms. So already that's strange, isn't it? Imagining that you have 4 arms. Now, why would you sit on a cushion and imagine that you've got 4 or even 1,000 arms? Not to mention all of those heads. You know, why would you do that? If we talk about it in a simple way, and it's not really true, we'd say it's symbolic. But these practices, they come from the great sacred purity that's timeless. They just come into the minds of very, very awakened beings as the very perfect and natural expression of compassion. And then because they had that vision, they turn that into a practice that we can do. And it's very effective. The main thing is it works. Actually, the bottom line is that it works. It's like my telephone number. I won't give it to you, but if you had it, you just go beep, beep, boop, beep, boop, 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 and I'm on the other end. Now, why that should happen, that's just the number. You dial any other number, you won't get me. You dial that number, you're through to me. When we set our mind in the way that these visionaries have seen, and we use our imagination and our prayers and many other things in the right way, it attunes us to a compassion that we never experienced before. It opens the door to a compassion that can just grow and grow and grow. When we look into that compassion, we see it's not just a woolly feeling of I love everybody. It's a skill. It's a skill. We find that if you really want to live as a compassionate being, you need many skills. You need to be very generous and open. To give of yourself is one thing. You need patience, because helping people is not easy. You need a great deal of patience to cope with all of the frustration that comes with it. One needs wisdom,